finishing up the 7 levels of communication, and we are going to be discussing chapters 8 through the end. And I will say I loved these chapters. So anyway, we will be kind of discussing that. And one thing that kind of stood out to me as we read dated books, it's very interesting for me to listen and kind of hear and read how marketing stuff has changed, because he was talking about, I think in like chapter 10 or something,
yeah.
how you should go meet a client to sign a contract. Like, let me tell you something. If I told every one of my clients I was going to meet them, I would get throat punched like 12 times a day. So
But that
that
was
has
interesting,
definitely,
though.
it was, because, you know, I guess as the shift in technology was happening, there was a lot of people who probably didn't want to let go of the old school ways. And now the vast majority of everybody has shifted. So the old school ways feel very antiquated.
Which I feel like explains so many interactions that I haven't understood with clients. Like for instance, I'll send them a document that'll never get signed. And I'm like listening to it. It was funny when he said it, my heart dropped. I was like, oh.
Yes. So chapter 8 starts with the question, what can I do for you? I guess it was this chapter that he was talking about that in. Sorry, I thought it was later in the book. Anyway, in this chapter, he does talk a little bit about emailing paperwork versus face-to-face, listening and getting feedback. That's why it's face-to-face is good. So when I was in scouting, I guess I'm still in scouting a little bit, but one of the sayings that we say as leaders is feedback is a gift. And if you've taken a certain training, you know to kind of mimic that with it truly is. So, you know, feedback's a gift. It truly is the whole thing together. And he kind of touches on this in the book. And I do believe that I think feedback is important. I think that's how we learn and grow. And I think that if you're willing to be open to that, you are definitely going to go in the right direction as far as whatever your goals are. He talks about the informational zone equals email. That's what you should use your email for. I think that that's probably still true today. I think that email is a good way to get information, get value out. Like when I'm coaching my agents, you know, we talk a lot about what to put in your newsletter. Well, don't vomit that you're a realtor. Give them something. Figure a way to make them want to open it every week or every month or however often you send it. He did say that high Ds kind of have to work, email should equal a future phone call, right? So whatever you put in that email should give you a reason to pick up the phone or have that phone kind of ring. He started talking about the magical email, and I don't know if he actually went through the whole thing, but he talks about a few different ways to make the phone ring. One of them being asking, what can I do for you? And then he starts talking a little bit about social media and positive posts, meaning I want to give 100 referrals and I want 50 referrals to come into me. So to start kind of manifesting, but doing it in a positive way. And then asking, who can I refer to you? I think that kind of goes along with that magical email. Like, what do you need? Who can I refer to you? How can I help you? And so I am excited about possibly implementing some of these into my business. And what were you guys' thoughts on this particular chapter? What is your thoughts on how it's changed? Is the book still relevant? Have things shifted? What does that look like?
So,
sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to try and figure out that magic email that he had. And I think what that was the contest where he said, you know, give away a iPad or something so that you can get everyone's contact information and a reason to respond back to them. And that was, I think that's simply all it was just a contest in a way.
Was it? It may be. We used to do something, or they do something at Keller Williams called a bold 100, where you send out, or a reverse 100, where you send out an email and give people a certain time to call you, like a 4-hour window to sign up for a giveaway. And it's a good way to get their data, right? We're updating our data. Give us a call. Even if we have your updated data, you get entered into our drawing once a quarter.
Just that simple. I thought it was going to be more magical too.
Yeah.
Sorry, David, go ahead.
Oh yeah. So I was gonna say, what is it? Give me 1 second. It's about to come back. So it's giving me different ways to like so I guess to Laura's point, she's making a few changes in like her business. But essentially I've been kind of thinking through the same thing. Like for instance, I've been thinking about launching a few campaigns. And so like I feel like this book came in on like the right time because it's like I haven't like hit the button where you start putting dollars in and all that kind of stuff. I haven't started doing that quite yet, but I'm getting there. And so now it's like I feel like my marketing plan's gonna be a little bit more developed than it would have if we had never came across this. And it would have been so like to his point, he's kind of talking about like, and this may be in later chapters, newer styles of marketing, but it's really kind of giving almost a context as to why it worked. So I'm excited about putting in some new changes now.
You're about to go get some billboards?
Absolutely not. Not right now. I do want one. Just put my face on it.
We need to share the cost of a billboard with all of us like standing back to back to back with our shoulders crossed saying we don't need this.
I got it.
Let's learn why.
I'll throw down for that.
Join our book club billboard.
Right. Join our book club.
Yes. Babe, any thoughts on chapter 8 and the informational zone and emails and all that kind of fun stuff?
Well, numbers of chapters always kind of get me sometimes. So I'm not quite sure if I'm before or after, but I want to say these are the kind of the topics of using the tools for limited purposes to some extent, I think, where like I have issues where clients love text messages nowadays. And I get a 14-page text message that I tell my client, this doesn't work for a text message. It doesn't make sense. And I thought there was something very interesting in some of the principles of utilizing certain, again, emails are great, but you don't use emails for actually communicating. You use emails to open the door to a verbal conversation, right? I mean, that's kind of the goal. The goal is to kind of get in front of them and in that sense. So I thought it was very insightful as far as making sure that you're using these tools the way that is going to parlay into the most fruitful relationship, and don't just rely on, yes, you can talk, you can have a 50-page email communication. And I think, to Laura, to your point on this one, I think you had mentioned, I kind of changing my principle on it, but a lot of times when I send client emails with some of my estate planning documents, I have a nice cover letter, if you will, that I put into the email, the body of the email, which makes your email words 2 to 3 pages long. Now, as opposed to just kind of attaching the cover letter as an attachment, which most people will read the attachment, but most people don't read the actual email. They read one or 2 lines, and then they move to the attachments. So I'm putting all this time into this great email that nobody's even reading anymore, right? Kind of that same thing, utilizing the email for the right purpose. Hey, read the attachments. Call us when you're done. That's my email now for the most part, as opposed to the attachment, which has all the information that nobody gets to. So I thought that was kind of really insightful to that. And I've always kind of relied on the text message issues. Don't text me asking for a legal opinion in a text message. I'm just going to I don't ignore you, but send me an email, give me this information in a different way. Again, emails are great for that because I can print it out, I can save it, I can keep that for posterity. But the goal of it when it comes to discussing and actually getting in front of a potential client or client manager, whatever, in person, on the phone, verbal communication is key, and that's what's going to get you through the door. That was interesting. I'm not sure if that was this chapter or not, but I feel like it's around this time.
Yes. Yeah. I would be interesting if they rewrote the book today, now that 2020 has passed. To me, this is the only chapter that would require some changes. But I think you would see major changes in this. Because 2020 even changed Craig's perspective on physical face-to-face meetings. When my clients tell me we can do a face-to-face meeting, I mean, when I tell them we can do a Zoom meeting over a face-to-face, like they are so happy. And then after that, they want phone calls. And then there's some of my clients who won't even answer the phone. Like I have almost physically lost contracts over not properly communicating with a high D. And I was giving her way too much data all at once, and she was like out. So I think that, you know, with the change and the shifts of 2020, I think understanding your client and how they communicate is super important. Right? Understanding that disc profile and kind of what that looks like and what that feels like. But I am excited to implement some of this. I mean, I already do kind of the care calls. I think it's funny that he talks about those in this book. He doesn't call it care calls. I don't remember exactly what he calls it, but where you call the client, figure out, okay, what can I do for you by the end of the conversation? The agents that survived 2020 and when all of this technology shift happened, that's what we were doing. Care calls. And what's funny is they're still relevant even though we're not in 2020. Like it is still okay to pick up the phone and say, hey, how are you? So I think a lot of us kind of went right back to our typical marketing and left that by the wayside. And I think that's a way a lot of new agents, you know, we coach on that at a high level. Pick up the phone, call and talk to your folks, see what you can do for them. All right, chapter 9, transformation. Have a plan for your assistant. He is talking about your first hire and growth kind of in this chapter and needing a plan for that. So I'm glad he kind of put it down on paper, what you should be doing. These chapters started getting a little bit shorter and shorter, I feel like. But I am glad that he put it down on paper because I think growth is probably, if you do all of these 7 levels of communication and do all these things in your business, growth is going to happen inevitably, right? Like it's not going to be avoidable. And so thinking about that is important. And I'm glad that he kind of talks about it at the end of the book, because I think a lot of books leave us right where it leaves us. And there's no like, okay, what should you think about in the future? But have a plan for your assistant. Keep your high producing activities, right? So when you're giving activities away to someone underneath you, the big question I get a lot of times in coaching is, well, what do I tell them to do? The stuff you don't want to do and the stuff that doesn't make you a lot of money, right? That actually cost you money for you to do that activity. It costs me money for me to manage a contract at this point. My time is worth more somewhere else. And then I like how he kind of wrapped this chapter up. Now that you've learned, you need to teach. So each one teach one. I think that that's important, not so much for just one particular reason. I think giving back is super, super, super important. But I think when you're trying to learn a skill and you use the EDGE method, explain, demonstrate, guide, and enable, once you get to the guiding part, right? And you can actually teach someone and you enable them to do that skill, it actually solidifies that skill within your toolbox at a more sound and cohesive level. So you actually understand that skill and can practice that skill at a substantially higher level once you get to the teaching portion of understanding and knowing it. So thoughts, comments, questions?
That part was really exciting, 'cause then he kind of reflected on the different lessons that he went through and how kind of each lesson he already shared it with somebody else and explained it to them. And it's kind of neat because I think even Laura and I, we've in our chats, we've shared with each other things that we have learned and do, and even sharing it with our spouses and implementing it at home. So it is neat to take these lessons that we learn in all these books and actually apply them, and then also share it with others to hopefully improve their lives as well.
Craig, any thoughts?
I think when you're into the material, it makes it easy to share as well, right? Like you're excited.
It makes sense too. It's such an easy concept. It's like, everything where he says, I know I'm supposed to call people. I know I'm supposed to write emails. I know I'm supposed to text them, but how do I do it? And that's the meat and potatoes of it.
I feel like a lot of these chapters are kind of so when he kind of talks about delegating tasks that, 1, you don't really like to do, and then 2, that it really costs you more to keep it, so delegate that. Kind of going through this book, especially this chapter, it kind of has me reevaluating what some of those things are for my business. Because I feel like there's a lot of things that are very technical and need to be done. So, like, for instance, Laura's talking about managing contracts. Well, you know, building certain like reports for clients sometimes gets a little difficult to you know, um, hand off to another individual, but it's like that kind of allows me to focus more on actually analyzing the report so that I can get on the phone with the to kind of tell them like, okay, well, based on your reports, this business did this month, yada yada yada, which is much more of a value add because that's more of something that somebody would go and brag about. Like, what does he call that? Your clients that like an ambassador that gives them more ammo, right? Oh man, every time I sit down with David, he tells me this. How's your bookkeeper doing? How's your CPA doing? It's like, oh, I don't know. What's his number? So it's like it all kind of makes sense now, and now I'm starting to reevaluate what some of those activities
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's kind of a learning. It was been still a learning curve for me in regards to as I'm growing my practice, what I want to keep, what I want to offload, certain things I kind of like to keep, but I probably shouldn't be keeping. I'm still kind of learning about. I don't say it's administrative stuff, but certain things that I can definitely. It is not the moneymaker for me per se, but just something that I want to make sure it's done right or whatever the case. So I'll kind of pick on that task, or I feel that it is to David, to your point, reviewing the report once it's done. So some of my estate planning stuff goes particularly on more on the high level. That sometimes people may wait a few months for their documents. Hint, hint, David, sorry. But because I didn't want to offload it to somebody, right? I wanted to do it out with myself. And it probably could cause a delay. And good thing that I had a great client that wasn't too much yelling at me all that often for the documents. But it probably would have behooved me to say, okay, offload it for the preparation, and then I kind of take a look at it and kind of fine tune and hone it and make sure that that's applicable for what I need in my determination. But it's tough to let go of control sometimes.
Right. Yeah, actually, Craig, sorry, something that you kind of made me think of just now is I've started to value the peer review process a little more. And actually not even like a full peer review, just kind of like breaking out putting together a legal document or whatever, and then actually having a separate person go in to look and review it. Because I know sometimes for me, it's like no matter how many times I go through a document, I'll give it to somebody, like a client or whatever, and they'll look at it and they're like, well, what about this? I don't like this. And then I'm like looking at it, I'm like, oh, well, oops. If I had just maybe read it one more time after like a night or whatever. But, I feel like I notice it faster the more I start to offload that because I'll kind of see it thinking from a client perspective as opposed to I just wrote this. I am review it. I don't know if you've had that same experience at all, but
Yeah, well, I think it's always a good idea to offload some of that and get another set of eyes on it, just because you don't always catch your own stuff, and you're quick to scan, right? And
right,
so not only, offloading some of that not only takes the pressure off, but helps to alleviate mistakes, right? So this book doesn't talk a ton about systems. It implies that you need them and you should use them and you should use time blocking and all of these things, but this is more about how to actually implement communication. But having those systems in place just eliminates need for extra employees and eliminates error and room for messing up.
right,
Two of you can get more done if your systems are right.
right.
And that kind of stuff. Awesome. Well, we will kind of move on to chapters 10, 11, and 12. These chapters, I don't know how many pages they were, but it couldn't have been many because they were only about 3 minutes each as we were reading. So I'm going to kind of lump them all together. They start talking a little bit about Rick's change in mindset as he's having lunch with Dawn. And you kind of find out that he's got the hots for Michelle or whatever the girl's name is in the book. And she's of course engaged, and you know, he starts doing some digging and like blows up her whole engagement, which she's thankful for, which I guess is a good thing. They don't lose their friendship over it, which is nice. But as he's talking to Don, and Don's talking about the billboards and you know how it's terrifying to remove all those ads and stop spending all those dollars. But it was interesting how Rick talks about his shift in mindset, right? And I think that's an important part of this book, because we can read as many books as we want and we can do as much work on ourselves as we want. But until that actual shift in mindset occurs, this is all just, you know, pretend. You've got to have that shift in mindset. And I think that as we shift and become more conscientious that we're coming from contribution, I think it's easier at that point for people to want to follow us, because again, you just get excited about where you're coming from as opposed to, you know, worrying about the dollar. I've got an agent I'm coaching right now, and he's so like worried about that closing happening. You know, today he sent me a big long text about the appraisal, and he's like, should I be worried? And I'm like, no, you shouldn't be worried that the agent on the buy side is trying to do the appraisal fast. You should be dancing and doing the happy dance, because you will find out quicker if there's a problem.
Mhm.
And you'll have more days before closing to fix it if it is. And, you know, and again, he's worried about and he's focused on that, because at the end of the day, he is focused on that closing. I think that closing, he's not my mentee. I just coach him. He's somebody who I kind of share. Somebody asked me to help with him or whatever. But I think this is the last closing he has to have, and he no longer has to pay that mentor fee anymore. So, you know, there's a lot of value in that closing, but to listen to him talk and to watch his anxiety and all of that kind of stuff, I am thankful for the mind shift. And I think you can have that mind shift whether the money's flowing in or not. Like, I think it's a mindset. So, and then of course him and Michelle end up together, or it implies that. Anyway, what are your concluding thoughts on the book?
It's definitely a great book. I love that it's only like 5 hours long, that you could listen to it in a week if you wanted to. And it's something I think look forward to, like if I have a car ride or something, that I'm going to pop it in and listen to it, because it's one you're going to hear new messages each time. And I know I've already missed a whole bunch of messages that after listening so closely to already. So good find.
I feel like it demystifies like paying for leads a little bit, almost in a sense. Like, because I know I feel like paying for leads is definitely like a fantastic supplement, but I almost feel like the stuff that's in this book almost kind of. So what I would say is, if I had read this book before paying for leads, boy, all them damn leads, like it'd have been ridiculous, because now I have like clients that truly are ambassadors, and it's like, before reading this book, I'm not gonna lie, it's weird to me. Like it's like I just feel like people are blowing smoke up my ass. But after kind of like working with them after a while, I started to like have to think to myself, like, this is stuff that people like accounting people truly just don't understand, and people are just scared of it. Whereas like you come to me with that problem, and I'm like, oh yeah, no, you just do this and this. And so it kind of like, you know, gets rid of that angst for them. But never did I really think that the more that you pour into that person, the more leads you get.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I was definitely I enjoyed the book. I thought it was very interesting for me personally, as far as communication levels and how to good you know, and good communication, bad communication. You know, in that sense, I never I guess I read a book similar to this type of material. I felt a little bit And Natalie was like, I like the fact it was 5 hours. I wish it was probably 10, because there's probably enough backstory in the book that it referenced other techniques and things that were commonplace in the author's mind that were not they were not so commonplace in my mind just yet. But it definitely opened my eyes to different ways of communicating and what's the best way to do that. Again, good money after bad money, right? Bad time after good time, right? Or good time after bad time, right? Sure, you can spend 20 hours doing certain communication, but it's not fruitful, right? I can spend, $100,000 a month on billboarding, but is that really the best allocation of my $100,000? Right? So it's all different levels of types of communication, and it was definitely a interesting concepts, and I enjoyed the book, and I felt like I learned a lot from it.
Do we get to talk about the one thing we're going to implement from the book? Well, I already did it. So he talked about in here, and I have been on the fence about this for a while. And I think, Laura, I think to some extent you do this as well. He talked about ranking customers and having, like, I guess almost like different categories, like one of them being an ambassador. I had actually just written a policy, like a corporate policy that was based on breaking out the customers, because by the time you think about it, one of the other books I think Steve had recommended, he kind of talks about essentially the good enough spot, where it's you're kind of focused more on what's good enough for that client, tailoring it truly for that client. Some clients truly can't afford to have a bookkeeper, but they can have someone to kind of review their books and then learn how to do it themselves. And so it's if you don't look at that good enough spot, you may have somebody that you completely send to the side, whereas they could be an ambassador for you. You do a limited scope of services, and next thing you know, they done brought you 4 or 5. I have some clients like that right now. They're on and off, and one just brought a huge project, and we're scoping it out now. And I'm like, wow, okay, I believe it now. I believe it.
Wow.
So
Good job. That's inspiring.
thank you.
Yeah, Laura's been helping me work on my goals and what things I'm going to implement to build my career and networking and working with meeting other people in groups, and even things that have nothing to do with real estate, but using those as opportunities to write them notes whenever they share something that's relevant, or that I can just reply and not necessarily say, hey, I'm a realtor, I'll sell your house for you, but say, hey, I'm your friend and you can count on me and be there for you. And just through habits, they'll know that I'm a realtor, and hopefully it builds that relationship and builds those additional referrals. So I'd like to try the notes, get addresses, and sit down and hurt my hand.
So I do a lot of this already in my business. I do the phone calls, I do the notes, I do a lot of the technical things that he tells you to do. We've been doing them now for probably, I would say, 6 to 9 months at a high level. And it's definitely, real estate, you're 90 days behind, right? What you're doing today pays you in 90 days. That's just a fact. And so it takes about 3 to 6 months to kind of get that ball rolling, but we are definitely starting to see an influx of responses. Not all of it is turned to business. I mean, some of it, I went on a listing appointment this weekend, and I'm the kind of realtor that tells my clients if it's a good idea for them to move or not. And I agree with them when they call me and say, hey, this is not the best idea. She doesn't want to move to Oklahoma for 2 years. Her mortgage is like $800 a month, even with the tax increase. And if she was to sell and take that $100,000, yes, she could pay her house off in Oklahoma, but no, she couldn't live as comfortably as she does now, because her rent would go up. It would double, right? So it doesn't make sense for her to sell. And so my job is to stay in touch with her from, now until she gets ready to sell. She did tell me I'm getting hired, not the other agent, And a lot of it was the things that I implement that are from, I know I was very excited. That was from this book, right? So, a lot of the technical stuff I'm already doing at a pretty high level. I want more than anything to commit to affirmations and my thankful book. This is the second book we've read this year that says we should do it. They're making more money than I'm making, and they're smarter than I am. And I think that that's I think that's a piece in my life that's potentially missing. I think it's something that needs to be worked on just for self-growth. So that'll be what I attempt to. I've been doing my affirmations for 2 weeks now again in the shower.
Boom. Have like the little reactions and shit.
They're kind of fun. How about you, Craig?
I like David's little.
Eh,
Yeah, no, I mean, what am I want to implement? Is that, I mean, that's the question, right? Yeah, well, I mean, I want to implement more time to learning more what I don't know, after reading this book. I do want to do better client management. Now, I am on the phone dealing with client management all day long, but again, I think I can do a better job after listening and kind of this information. And I think that's gonna be my biggest takeaway is the best devotion of my time and resources and kind of utilizing, I want to say referrals, but with my estate planning side of my business, I get a lot, and I think there's a lot of opportunities that fall through the cracks within that. Now I try to cross market and bring. Obviously, Laura and I work with a whole bunch of, her client this weekend was a result of my estate planning, right? So I mean, I constantly asking other information from my clients, and I'm constantly referring clients out to other things, but I think I'm missing out on the cross referrals back to myself. So I'm kind of seeing what other services I can either provide directly to them or to other service providers that I work with, that I can refer out to kind of potentially growing that. But yes, I mean, I think better communication and better devotion of resources to, I definitely work. I mean, I'm 13, 14 hours a day with running from, I'll give it 7:45 in the morning, 7:30 until 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock for the most part. Good every single day. So I'm definitely putting time in. It's just I need to put better time, if you will, for certain things.
Awesome. We have 30 seconds.
Oh.
Or we're gonna get cut off.
Next
Now 25.
book.
Next book. Do you have that?
Yeah, well, so I have two.
You don't have time to talk about two. You have 17 seconds.
The second one. In
Well,
your
shorter
mind.
one or longer one?
The first one.
Shorter one?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, then that's decided. So we're doing the win-win wealth strategy. It's going to be, it's a follow-up to the tax planning one. So it's the same author.